Hello, I'm videotaping my presentation. I hope that it's not boring, and I hope you guys enjoy it, right? So let's begin. Da, 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 da. Just kidding. Don't smiling. Okay. So our topic is improving America's schools, the role of incentives. Here it's a fact the federal government provided funding for education reform in different aspects. Funding for schools has grown more or less continuously for 100 years. However, the rapid increases in expenditures for schools of the past decades have simply not been matched by measurable increases in student performance. Therefore, we need to reflect what we did. Are we investing the right amount? Are the resources devoted to schooling used in the best way? In order to answer these questions, benefits must be compared with costs from the perspective of economics. Economists believe that the fundamental problem is not a lack of resources, but poor application of available resources. Let's take a look at some things we did in the past. We invested in additional teacher training. However, studies of school performance show no effect of additional teacher training and experience on student performance. So the past education reforms have not been successful, and the nation's school system has failed to provide appropriate incentives for teachers and students. Also, we shrink the class size and employ more teachers. But the central evidence for the effect of class size comes from studies of extremely small classes where intensive tutoring can take place. Much carefully collected data suggests only marginal benefits to smaller class sizes. If these factors have no systematic influence on student performance, which the evidence shows they don't, expansion of resources in the ways of the past are unlikely to improve performance. With few incentives to obtain improved performance, it should not be surprising to find that resources are not systematically used in a fashion that improves performance. Then, how to use existing resources effectively? Before discussing about how, let's take a look at the three principles to use existing resources effectively. First, resources devoted to education must be used efficiently. It means that many existing programs are inefficient and should be replaced by more cost-efficient ones. Second, improved performance incentives must be introduced in schools. Third, changes must be based on systematic experimentation and evaluations of what does and does not work. Improvement on a large scale will be possible only with development of a knowledge base about effective approaches. This is a call for more experimentation and integrated evaluation rather than for more research on schools as they are currently organized. Next, let's learn what is performance-based incentive. It's called also you can call it PBI. PBI exists in all fields. Examples of performance-based incentives include merit pay and hiring, promotion, and retention of teachers on the basis of classroom performance. In this context, PBI means resources and rewards are directed at good student performance and away from bad performance. In addition to incentives directed at schools and teachers, it's important to think of incentives directed at students. More significant performance incentives for students could reinforce and amplify performance incentives for school personnel. If students who work hard and perform well in schools typically see only minor differences in rewards when compared with students who do not work hard and who do not perform well, then they will lose motivation to achieve good performance. Implementation of performance incentives requires having explicit goals and developing measures of performance that relate to those goals. A critical problem is what is defined as good performance. The author does not see PBI as a test-driven management of schools, but instead a reform that incorporates a variety of performance observations. Then what should people do to make PBI system happen? The federal government should take on a primary role in enabling standards to be developed, in supporting broad program evaluation, and in disseminating the results of evaluations. For states, they must first work to remove unproductive input regulations and certification standards, which unfortunately form the core of most current state education programs. The role of states should evolve into a policy role and not a direct management role to complete flexibility within local schools. Local school districts should take new responsibility for curriculum choices, managing personnel, including hiring and firing on a performance basis, and establishing closer links with businesses, particularly for the benefit of students not continue on the colleges. Business also have new laws. While U.S. business have frequently litigated the quality of workers they receive from schools, they have never worked closely with schools to define the skills and abilities they seek in prospective workers. More direct employment in schools, perhaps coupled with long-term healthy relationships, could help both schools and business. Any improved system will have to harness the energy and imagination of the personnel in the local schools. If incentives are instituted to reward performance, school personnel must have the freedom to institute the programs and approaches that will best enhance student performance. Although the concept of decentralizing decision making is appealing, there is little evidence to suggest that sufficient capacity exists in most schools to make it successful. This brings out the arguments for decentralization of decision making. Let's take a look at the effects of school-based management plans. Before I talk about the effects, let me tell you what is SBM. So SBM means the school site becomes the central locus of controlling decision making. Those who support SBM they said that the larger the unit of governance, the less able citizens are to express their individual preferences, which the education system's organization ought to satisfy insofar as possible. And the smaller the unit of governance, the more parents will participate, contributing to higher student achievement. And if parental choice of schools is added to the plan for decentralization, competition will improve the service quality per dollar. And those who are against SBM, they said that there are substantial externality and public good characteristics in K-12 education, and this requires governance over a large number of districts to ensure consistency in the delivery of standards that are for the good of the whole. And the equal educational opportunity clauses of state constitutions require more equality in service levels, and this can only be achieved through large area governance mechanisms. Empirical studies tells us first, there are overwhelming obstacles in the way of evaluating the impact of SBM on student achievement. There is virtually no empirical or statistical evidence in the literature. And second, the handful of studies with some controls and statistical data provide no significant support for the proposition that school-based management will increase student achievement. Oops. Okay. We have proposed that performance-based incentive can be an efficient method to carry out education reform and improve student performance, but it is both a solution and a problem. It poses three major problems in education. First, to reward performance, the desired output must be articulated. Most Americans support higher academic standards in schools, but there is little agreement about what those standards should be. Second, There are measurement problems. Although student performance in such basic skills as math and reading can be measured with reasonable and recognized standards, measuring performance in other academic areas such as those associated with higher order skills still pose serious problems despite considerable recent development efforts. A third problem is distortion. The most serious distortion problem is that incentives focus effort on those objectives most amenable to measurement. Whatever is not measured and not rewarded is likely to get less serious attention than it might otherwise merit. Objectives associated with the development of students' problem solving and high order skills, which present difficult measurement problems, are likely to suffer. But performance-based incentives, when it work together with decentralization, I mean it's school-based management, may have significant benefits partly because they work together. Partly because the advantages of one reform may help balance the limitations of the other, as I explained here. Um, the primary advantage of incentives is that they direct behavior. It addresses a central weakness of decentralization. Many local schools, especially those in disadvantaged areas, may not have the capacity to guide school behavior effectively. And the major drawback of incentive is distortion. An advantage of decentralization is that it provides a way to tune the system relatively easily when it becomes distorted. It allows close-up monitoring and adjustments unencumbered by bureaucratic red tape, procedures, and hierarchy. So, in all, incentives provide a check on decentralization, where the risk is that local actors may not direct the school's instruction program well. Decentralization puts a check on the distortions likely to emerge in an incentives-only system. So that's it. So now let's hear Erica's presentation. Bye bye.